Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Tonight I'd like to revisit one of the very first stories that I'd ever written, and I really hope that this time I do it really good justice. So if you're wondering what that fluttering is behind your eye, don't dismiss it just yet, with a little story that I like to call Flutters.
Have you ever had a fluttering under your eyeball? It's when the eyelid under the eye begins to twitch uncontrollably. If you look into the topic, you will find that the most frequent causes are said to be stress, alcohol abuse, and excessive amounts of time staring at a screen or monitor. Although these are the most common causes of this phenomenon, others exist as well. John was spending the day with his family at a local recreational park. Swimming, hiking, and battling flying insects filled the day as typical outdoor activities. John and his son had just finished going for a dip in the nearby lake before throwing a football and chasing each other back and forth underneath the midday sun. He made sure to reapply his bug spray, as John had a strong distaste for the creepy crawlies. It was a typical summer day with the sun shining, birds singing, and the trees swaying in an almost unnoticeable gentle breeze. "Throw it, Dad, I'll catch it," exclaimed Richie, John's 12-year-old son, from the other end of the sprawling meadow-like field. John shifted his arm to toss the oblong, inflated ball, but before he could initiate his throw, he paused to swat the bugs swarming his face. "Boy, the gnats are terrible today," he proclaimed before raising his hand above his head and throwing the ball to his son across the field with the considerable effort that was needed to breach the gap between them. The ball sailed through the air with an iconic spiral, slipping just between Richie's fingers and bouncing into the tree line behind him. "I almost had it," Richie scolded himself as he turned to retrieve the ball. He ventured into the woodline, located the football, and walked back into the clearing of the field. As he emerged from the trees, Richie saw his father gently rubbing his face, as if trying to swipe sweat from around his nose or eyebrows. "Come on, guys, come eat some lunch," exclaimed Molly, John's wife, from the near picnic tables. The father motioned to his son to join him, and the pair proceeded to unite with their mother/wife for an enjoyable summer picnic. My name is Jim, and I suppose I first noticed something was wrong the day before the incident, but I shrugged it off as nothing that seemed all that unusual. I had stepped into the break room of our firm for a half-time cup of coffee. As I walked over to the coffee pot and began to pour the steaming black liquid into a ceramic No. 1 Dad mug, I noticed John with his back turned to me, facing the wall. He seemed to be checking his face in the window-sized mirror. "Hey, John, getting gussied up?" Although he didn't turn around to meet my gaze, he replied with a, "No, I'm just checking something." "What'd you think of the morning meeting?" I asked. But this time, he did not reply to my inquiry. When he did reply, he turned around and said, "Do you see anything wrong with my eye?" "No," I said. "Why?" "I've been having one of those damn eye flutters for the past 3 days, and now I think I'm going blind in my right eye." "Let me see," I said, as if I was qualified to make any kind of accurate analysis. He opened his eyes, and I stared deep into his pupils and surrounding ocular areas. "I don't see anything," I said. "It's like my vision's starting to go blurry in that eye, and it's getting darker. If it doesn't clear up, make an appointment with the doctor, man," I told him. He nodded in agreement and turned to leave. "Hey, are we still on for lunch tomorrow?" I asked. He turned once again and nodded in agreement. I then grabbed my steaming mug and proceeded back to my office to finish the day's labors. The following day, I walked down Quail Street towards a little dive known as Pirello's. The food was halfway decent, as long as you don't order the fish. And whoa, the coffee isn't too great either, let me tell you. I pushed the doors open, and before I could be seated, I spied John in the corner booth by the restroom corridor. John looked over at me and motioned for me to join him. As I got closer, I noticed something was wrong. John's eye seemed to contain a pinkish hue and was nearly only half open. I sat down across the table from him and proceeded to immediately ask, "Did you happen to make your appointment? Your eye looks pretty bad." He looked at me as best as he could and replied, "Yeah, I have an appointment tomorrow." Maybe you should go to the ER. It looks a lot worse than it did yesterday." I acknowledged my observation and stated that it had only begun to get this bad within the past few hours, and that he may take me up on my advice after lunch and head to St. Peter's ER. I told him that would probably be a good idea, and I picked up my menu. Honestly, I don't know why I did, but I ordered the same thing every Friday, a Reuben with a side of fries, and one terrible cup of coffee. The waitress came and went, taking our orders to the back to be cooked by the chef. While we waited, John and I talked about little stuff, like the weather, news, and work. Before long, coffee and food were placed in front of both of us, I with my sandwich and John with his usual, a bowl of clam chowder. We began to dig in, continuing our conversation regarding yesterday's meeting, when I noticed something very wrong. "John? What's that?" I asked. As he looked at me, I could see it better. "What's what?" he retorted. "Your eye. It's got something white in it." As he pried the lids of his eyes open to self-investigate, a small white object fell from his eye and landed in his chowder. Both of us started staring intently, trying to locate the white object within the white meal. It didn't take long to spot, however, because it was the only thing in the bowl, wriggling and squirming around. "Oh my God!" John exclaimed as he gawked in horror at the tiny white worm struggling in his lunch. Before I had time to say a word, John shot to the restroom, slammed the door, and locked the bolt on the doorknob. I sat there for a while, figuring he had to vomit or something. John stared into the mirror. He peeled the lower lid from his ocular orbit, and what he saw delivered a shocking terror that he had never known until then. There, between his eye and his eyelid, resided a small colony of tiny, writhing maggots. He tried to stick his fingers in to pull them out, but all he was able to accomplish was to present himself with blinding pain and induce tearing. Panic now started to set in. He needed something to dig them out with. Nothing in his pockets. Then, the thought hit him like he should have known it all along. John raised his fist and struck the mirror in front of him. The shattering glass was heard throughout the restaurant, but because the door was locked, neither the staff nor myself were able to open it. John could hear the pounding and the shouting questions coming from the other side of the door, but he paid no attention. All he could focus on was those wretched little creatures wriggling around in his eyeball. John reached into the sink and grasped for a piece of glass in his right hand and pulled at his eyelid with his left. As he pressed the jagged shard under his eye, he began to scrape back and forth while releasing gut-wrenching shouts of pain and anguish. But it didn't matter. He had to get them out. He continued to scrape the border of his ocular orbit until he could feel the glossy sphere start to dislodge from place. He placed the glass behind his eyeball and used the leverage to pop the eye from its socket. The pain was overwhelming, and John was struggling to stay alert. Blood oozed and spurted from his face, spilling onto his clothes and all over the tile floor. Dancing around and screaming in pain, John regained his composure and grasped the eyeball with his right hand and lifted the glass shard with his left. However, before John was able to sever the optic nerve, the slick blood beneath his dress shoes propelled him forward to the floor face first, into the tile. It was only a few minutes that had gone by, but it felt like an hour. The screaming from the other side of the door had stopped as the chamber beyond held an eerie silence. Finally, one of the employees was able to release the lock from the door with a credit card. As we entered, we were greeted with a gruesome scene. The scent of urinal cakes and copper filled the air. Blood covered the floor and most of the walls, like the room was painted this way. Broken glass resided within the sink and was scattered about the floor, mixed with the blood. In the center of the floor, on the tiles in front of the broken mirror, rested John's body, like someone had just tossed it, like a limp sack of oranges. Beneath his motionless body was a thick, ever-spreading pool of blood. I don't know why, but I watched as the chef turned him over onto his back. I'll never forget what I saw. John's eye was hanging loose from his socket by a strand of muscle fiber that rested on his cheek. A piece of glass was pushed deep into the socket, presumably into his brain. Finally, I could see the maggots still clinging to the glossy, hanging sphere, some falling to the floor. I decided to stay home from work the following day, but as I have the paper delivered to my house, I read the news with the morning's cup of coffee. Disturbing incident at Perillo's restaurant, the article displayed. I read the story intently. The coroner had issued a statement. Apparently, and actually an event that occurs quite frequently, a gnat had decided to hide its spawn in John's right eye.
Well, they say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, apparently, so is absolute terror. But I hope you get to experience that next weekend when you stop back in again here next Saturday for more gore galore. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.